The Plainville Board of Education, preparing students for success in a changing global society.
I'd like to call the meeting to order, and I'd like Mr. LePage to lead us in the pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next.
There's one over there, there's one there.
All right. Okay, welcome everybody. As the board is aware, this evening we are going to be accepting nominations for a new board chair, which is why I'm leading the meeting currently. Just to kind of review the Robert's Rules of Order, that each person can nominate just one candidate, and then we will have a vote by a show of hands once nominations are closed. So at this point, I'd like to open up the floor for nominations.
Dr. Brummett, I would like to make a nomination. What I'm thinking is that my hope is that the 11 of us will work in collaboration, casting aside partisan politics, and work to make this board, as the year goes on towards us, to establish this board so that we establish our own goals and a process with which we may be able to also judge how effectively we have operated. I would also like us to see that, including the 11 of us, that we more effectively use our student representatives and get their more input into what we're doing as a Board of Education. In that light, I believe that we will need an individual with experience and knowledge and proven leadership skills. And in that light, I would be pleased to honor Becky Terrell to be the next chairman of the Board of Education in Plainville.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other nominations this evening? Lori?
I'd like to nominate Deb Hardy as chairperson.
Excellent. Are there any other nominations for consideration this evening? Okay, hearing none. I would like to, by a show of hands, please, if you are voting for Becky Terrell, please raise your hand. Okay, I see 4 votes. If you are voting for Deb Hardy, please raise your hand. I see 5 votes. So, based on the outcome of that vote, it appears that Deb Hardy has been nominated for the position of board chair. And at this point, I will be turning the gavel over to our new board chair, Deb Hardy.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Dr. Burnett. Thank you. And then we would also like to, if we can, make a motion for a vice chair. If somebody could do that for us, we would appreciate it.
Madam Chair, I would like to nominate Nicole Palmieri for vice chair.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So Nicole has the position of the vice chair. Thank you, everybody.
Okay.
And if we could start our meeting, Dr. Brummett?
You can.
We are
So
ready.
now it goes over to part 4, the approval of minutes. So that would be under your jurisdiction.
I'd like to have somebody approve the minutes of the regular business meeting for June 11th, please.
Madam Chairman, I request that we approve the minutes of the June 11th regular business meeting of the Board of Education.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And also for the request approval for the minutes of June 11th, 2018, special meeting of the Board of Education.
I so move.
Second.
Second. So we're all set with the request approval of the meetings. We did vote.
Wait, okay. Going to the Finance Committee next.
Okay. Thirdly, I'd like to request approval of minutes of the board's special executive session meeting of June 18th, 2018.
So moved.
Second. Anybody else have anything? No? Okay, so we will accept those minutes for the board's special education. Next, I would like to do the request approval of minutes of the board's special executive session meeting on July 2nd, 2018.
I move that we approve the minutes of the special executive session on July 2nd, 2018.
And we have a second? So minutes approved for that meeting, special executive session on July 2nd. And next, we will go to our citizens' comments. Do we have any comments from citizens?
Wow.
No? Okay. Well, good. Council liaison, do we have anything from the council liaison?
Kathy's not here.
Kevin?
I don't-
Kathy.
Oh,
Kathy Polisi is not
that's
here this
right.
evening.
I forgot. Sorry. And superintendent's report?
Yes, thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. I'd like to officially welcome Allie Chabrello and Madeline Rund as our new board student representatives. We are glad to have you join us this year, and we look forward to your upcoming report later this meeting. So welcome, ladies. As the board was made aware during many updates this summer, the renovation at Wheeler is moving along very well. The abatement was finished in early August, and thanks to much hard work and coordination between Mr. Batchelder, our facilities and technology departments, and our teachers, classrooms were more than ready for the first day of school. So tonight we're joined by Scott Manjali and Madeline, oops, did I say that wrong? I think I copied that wrong. Excuse me. Scott Manjali and Marilyn Ryan. I almost made our new board student liaison an architect. So maybe someday. I know you're a lot of into engineering, but so excuse me. I'd like to welcome them to the podium to give us an update about the Wheeler project, along with Kevin Ross, because there will be quite a bit of discussion on technology, and we'll specifically be looking at discussion on Phase 2 and Phase 3 of the project. So Scott and Marilyn, come on up.
Thank you, board members. Good evening. My name is Scott Manjali. I'm a project manager for Castle Booz Associates, the architect for Wheeler Elementary School. As Dr. Brumman had mentioned, Wheeler has started construction over the summer, and it's going to be generally continuing for 2 years. In the process of going ahead to the State Department of Education and the Department of Administrative Services, we have to go to the state 3 times. 1 was for construction, which we've already gone through. 2 is for a phase called FF&E and technology, and Phase 3 that you heard about was for playground equipment. Tonight we're going to be specifically asking for the board's approval to go to the state in order for the grant process to continue for Phase 2, the FF&E and technology. What we have for you is a general presentation. We have all the materials if you like. There's a few hundred pages that's generally just a lot of spreadsheets of the material, the equipment. Both Marilyn Ryan, who's our interior designer she works with Castle Booz Associates, and Kevin Ross have worked on the documentation to provide to the state in order for us to generally get approval to go to bid. What going to bid means is generally pulling off of state contracts. We can go ahead and go to the state and then just buy particular pieces of furniture, particular pieces of equipment, particular pieces of technology. To that end, we also provided the spreadsheets. It's a little laborious process in terms of when we're going to be sitting with the Department of Administrative Services this Thursday, and in hopes to generally get their approval thereafter in order to get it, to get the furniture and the equipment for the first phase that's going to be coming up early 2019, or actually late 2018. So we'll have furniture and technology then. What we're showing here, and I'll have Marilyn generally go over what her process was quickly. Again, we did work with the principal, superintendent, facilities manager, and director of information technology for all of this equipment to make sure that the Wheeler Elementary School did get the updatest, the latest, and generally new equipment. The categories are generally broken down into up here in terms of technology, furniture first and then technology. What I'd like to maybe end with quickly before I turn it over to Marilyn is all of the budgets that you see here in terms of the subtotal, they're all under the estimates. Your construction manager is O&G Industries. They're responsible for constructing the project. They had gone through the bid process through early summer, late spring, and the bids came back favorably. So there was extra money to go ahead and to put into FF&E and technology and the playground equipment. And the budget came just under $800,000. And the budget was originally set at a lower number, but because the bids came in favorably, we did bump up some of the numbers for technology and FF&E in order to get everything that is desired and actually needed for the school. So I'm going to turn it over to Marilyn. She's just going to discuss the process that she had gone over. If you had any specific questions, we do have more slides, but honestly, there are a few hundred slides. I don't think anybody wants to sit through it. So if you did have any questions, we can certainly get into more of the details if you'd like.
Okay. Hi, I'm Marilyn. What I'd like to tell you about is the process that I go through when I select furniture for schools. First of all, I don't know if you understand about state contract and purchasing on state contract, but these are pre-negotiated prices. The products are vetted. They're all been approved by the state in terms of quality, and that means that it's not necessary to go out to bid because we're guaranteed to be getting a really good price on these products. I start off by asking a vendor, a furniture vendor, that I've worked with for many years, to give me a budget spreadsheet, like a down and dirty, like what am I looking at if everything is new? And so I get an idea of how much, this will cost. I also then take an inventory of the existing furniture and see if there's things that are viable to be reused. And frankly, at Wheeler, there were a few pieces, but not too many. So where we can reuse them, we are reusing some existing things. So what you're looking at in this spreadsheet is the broken down by categories, because the state asks us to do that. And then at the completion phases of the project. So where you see, for instance, where it says Category C chairs, Phase 1, that installation will go in January of 2019. Phase 2 is the next phase of the construction completion, and Phase 3 is the last one. The first two phases, the budget for the furniture is the same. There's a price increase that will happen on the third phase just because furniture every year does go up. But we managed to lock in the first two phases. So I worked with the vendor to identify appropriate pieces and very cost-effective pieces that will be durable and lasting, and worked with the principal to approve them, and we met with teachers, and this is where we are. So we have, as Scott mentioned, we have hundreds of pages of documents that will go to the state identifying each and every piece with specifications, but these are the numbers. So does anybody have any questions? Oh, yes. The columns that are labeled ineligible, that means that the state has determined that those are eligible to be reimbursed. So the state will reimburse if it's under the eligible column. The ineligible is things that they don't reimburse for, that is, they deem are not lasting enough products, they'll wear out too soon, that it's not worth putting it, against the 20 years' worth of payments to fund it. So there are things like, for instance, if you look down the column, pre-K, there's things that are necessary for a pre-K classroom, but they won't last long enough to be considered eligible. So that's the criteria for that. Any
I
questions?
just want to add that the Wheeler teachers were very actively involved in the selection of the furniture and the color schemes, and in fact, there was furniture on display at Wheeler that teachers could try out. So they were very much, along with what the guidelines had to be, involved in the selection as much as we could.
Yes, thank you. I forgot to mention that. Yes, they did get to sit test things.
Totally change it up.
That's okay.
So I'll just add a little bit about the technology, which is another big part of the FF&E portion. This is the first time I've gone through this process, which was interesting. The technology is your basic stuff. A lot of it is, some of the server or networking gear. That's all eligible. The technology has a different eligible, ineligible guideline. They kind of set it out. So anything that's like furniture-based, so like a desktop computer, is eligible. Anything that's portable is not eligible. But we worked through those numbers, and the majority of the money, the big thing that we're putting in is the big flat panel displays in the rooms, the touch displays instead of smart boards and projectors. Like we've talked about in the past, we really feel that they're going to have a much longer life, probably definitely into the closer to the 20 years that they would like, instead of a projector and things like that. So those are some of the big things there. Some of the good things, we already had stuff we just recently purchased through our E-rate program. So like our wireless access points are already all set. We don't even have to buy those. So that lowered the cost there. Same with the phones. We just put the phones in, so we're going to reuse the phones that we had, and they'll be ready to go. So we're good there. We did add some Chromebook carts, because the carts are reimbursable, which is nice. But we did put in Chromebooks as well. This would help us with offset some of our capital budget in the future too. So some of the things there. And then we have some displays in the hallways, a few printers, very few. We try to stick with the copiers. I think we just added, 2 printers, one for like the office area. I'm trying to think what else. Document cameras for the classrooms. What else did we do? Blanking now. That's basically it. There's really not a whole lot. It adds up quick, though. We did do some portable, like for the gymnasium, we did a portable screen instead of a mounted screen, so that he can roll it back into his office when he's done with it. In some places we put in smaller spaces, we put some smaller screens. They're not as, they need to be as big. And we also looked at the teacher laptop as well, is one of the things we did there.
You want to speak to the security system that you had some input on?
So the security system it's not in this package. Fortunately, it is. It's in the technology or the electrical package. But we are putting in new cameras over there, so there'll be, do you know what the number of cameras are? 12 or 13 cameras. Right now there's only like 4 or 5, so we'll have a much better view of the building. Some of the, they're looking at the doorways and auto close. All of the badge readers are being updated. So, we're adding the Raptor program. Not remember it for like 2 days. I've been trying to think about it. The Raptor program for, checking IDs as people come and go. So that'll be implemented there as well. That'll be done shortly, but it'll continue. So that's about it for the technology portion of it. If you have any questions?
Kevin, were we able to use any of the other equipment that was in Wheeler? Some of the whiteboards, any of that?
Well, we're going to reutilize all those over at Toflon, because those were actually slightly newer than the ones at Toflon. So all that equipment is actually going to Toflon to update their stuff, their projectors, because we updated Wheeler's like 4 years ago, when they were not sure if they were going to do a
Yeah.
partial or something like that. So we had to bite the bullet because the stuff they had was actually, most of it was donated from the high school when the high school project started. So we reutilize a lot of this stuff. So all of this stuff, when they're done, actually, we have 7 boards that are going into Teflon now because we don't have the space for them right now. But we put all of them back up after they did the abatement. We put everything back up, got it all working for day one. And so even the temporary classrooms all have smart boards and projectors in them right now.
Good.
So, but that's what we will reutilize and go from there.
Thank you.
Yep.
Actually, I had a question.
Yeah.
I was just curious, the ineligible expenditures, were there any surprises, or is that factored in, part of the project, or how's that paid for?
That was factored in. They knew that there'd be ineligible costs for a lot of this when they did their planning for the budget in the first place. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we planned for about 65% would be reimbursed, and the remaining would be ineligible for that. So that's where the bond for the town came into play.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe just one last thing in terms of the equipment. The other thing that we would like the board to consider is sole source. The state requests that the Board of Education vote on whether or not they would like to see a sole source. In this particular case, it's a floor cleaning machine. I believe there are 2 of them, one big, one small. We had gone over this specifically with Mr. Steve Bussell and his staff. And they have a couple in the district right now, and currently we were going to go to states with his letter of recommendation in terms of going to do sole source. He has tried other products that have not worked and aren't necessarily worth the money in his opinion. So with consideration, if that can also be voted on tonight. If you needed additional information, we can certainly get Mr. Bussell to talk about it, to provide further information. But just those 2 things, if we can vote on those tonight.
It's existing equipment that he already has, same brand, so like parts and some materials that they have would match. So instead of having the oddball thing that they don't have, that's one of the reasons.
So they have this equipment district-wide except for Wheeler, I see.
Well, and this would be added to, the floor maintenance, machines and stuff like that. So, and then they have a local repair person that supports them, so.
And Kev, is this not on the state bid? Is that why we're having to?
Yeah, correct. It's not on the state contract list.
There are a few things that are not on contract that will have to be outbid.
Is there a way that we can get a copy of what is on there that's not going to be paid for by the state, so that we have some idea what the cost is and what exactly that will be?
Sure. Do you want to write the second?
Yes, right now. No, just so we're aware of what's coming to us. That's all I'd like to just review that.
Did you want to provide the board?
I can send those, the documents we have.
You want to provide the board?
Yeah, we're going to do that. Yeah, this is a big file, because like you said, the hundreds of pages, we have to supply a data sheet or a spec sheet for every single item. So, I have one spec sheet that I think is 35 pages long for the networking equipment. So there's a lot of things like that. So we'll try to, I think we'll send you is the breakdown of each of the parts that I think from technology I have something, and I think you have something very similar. Yeah. So they're relatively small, few pages.
Right, and they all list out the price, whether or not eligible or ineligible, or where this master spreadsheet came from. It's divided into parts and pieces.
And whether they're available on contract or.
Yep, state or if it would have to go to bid.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll send the abstract of those particular items to the board. Later on in tonight's meeting, the board will be asked to approve some of the construction documents that we need to bring to the state Thursday morning to move the project forward. So that's under the new business component of the board's agenda. Any further questions for our architects or Kevin relative to where we're at with the Wheeler project and the next steps? It's moving along very, very well. It's currently on budget or under budget, and I think everything has gone along quite well. All righty. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. So I'd like to now do my opening of school report. I'll let Kevin get back to his desk so he can boot up my slides. But I am very pleased to report a smooth opening of school this year, in spite of a very hot start that resulted in 3 shortened days at Wheeler during the first week of school. It's worth mentioning, though, that the other 4 schools could have business as usual because of the fact that we do have air conditioning. Colleagues throughout the state had to create shortened days for every school in the district simply because they had, more than half their schools that didn't have air conditioning, and it makes a difference. It makes a difference. I went over to Wheeler several times, and the kids were pretty hot. So going home early was much appreciated by the staff and students and, of course, their families. So over the summer, we had a very cost-efficient process take place with Sam Adlerstein and Tim Rebstad of DATCO that reviewed all of our existing bus routes and determined that we could make some consolidations. And especially, and what came to light is, for the first time ever, preschool will run at the exact same time as the rest of our K-5 community. So Sam took a look at that along with Tim and found we could eliminate several bus runs because of that and really save close to $200,000 annually. So we did that. There were some parents we had to meet and troubleshoot with because some bus runs, we found there were bus runs that were in existence that were well within walking range. So we had to remove those, and we had to work with parents on that. Some buses have more children than usual, so we were looking at bus monitors where that is needed. But overall, I do applaud Tim and Sam for looking at that with a fine-tooth comb and trying to have some efficiencies. And I've worked really closely with parents, as has Sam and his office staff, and I believe we've resolved most of the issues that were surfaced as a result of some of those consolidations. And a lot of them have impacted Tafalon, but, so we've been in quite a bit of contact with Tafalon families. So during convocation, I mentioned that the vision document for this year that's currently on your screen isn't going to change just yet. We will be meeting with our Thought Exchange company next week, and they're going to walk us through another process this fall that we can get more feedback from our community members, both within the district, parents, teachers, and staff in the district, as well as our community members, to give us feedback on how we're doing. We're about at the midpoint of our 5-year strategic plan, so this is really timely. And when that report comes back, I'll review that with the board, and we can make determinations about adjusting our strategic plan. I want to just kind of go over a few key spotlights from convocation that relate to our goals for this school year. So on the next slide, I did introduce to teachers about continuing our PLC process, but I also introduced 2 theories of action. And although I think we're fairly explicit with what we set for goals, by creating a theory of action, you do make that even more explicit with the principals, and they in turn will create similar theories of action with their staff. So our theories of action revolve around utilizing PLCs to analyze student performance and discuss how we adjust our instruction to increase student achievement. And we also are continuing our work with learning targets that are standards-based, but also looking at really clear learning outcomes with those targets so that student engagement and achievement will increase. And on the next slide, we are looking at continuing to grow our professional learning communities. As the board's aware, we have 10 half-days throughout the school year set aside for PLCs, and we do put those to very good use. We are working on, and the goal for this year is that every PLC is at least at stage 5, where teachers are shifting their focus from how do we teach the kids to how well are they learning. We're looking at making sure we analyze all of our student work, whether it's an assessment or some written documents, to make sure that we know what's been learned and what needs to be improved upon. And we're definitely being driven by the results of our kids. And we do believe that collectively, our teachers have every skill that they need to move our kids forward, and as long as they're sharing their collective expertise, that to me will bring our district to the next level. And as I mentioned at convocation, we saw some nice jumps in our test scores across the board this year. We'll give you a more detailed report this fall, but we are seeing results already. For those PLCs that are ready to move to stage 6, we've given the framework for that, and that is really finding those kids who are performing at or above goal to continue to move them forward on a higher trajectory. Similarly, for children who are struggling, how do we make sure we adjust so that those children come and meet all the standards that we've set before them? On the next slide, we wanted to update the community and the board on all of our improvements for this year. And by now, everyone has heard about our school resource officer. She's already making a huge difference. There was a wonderful article about her in the Hartford Courant the other day, which I shared with the board. This week, I believe it's Wednesday, she will be offering a distracted driver training. I don't think anyone's going to argue with that teens can be distracted drivers. So students have access to that throughout the day on Wednesday. She'll be involved in the safety forum that we're having on the 26th. She'll speak about her role. We'll also have the Chief Attorney here to talk about the role of the police and the Board of Ed, and we'll have some speakers about other aspects of safety, such as student emotionality and how to keep kids emotionally safe. So those are all already happening. We've also done a tremendous amount of improvement in our cameras here at the high school. Kevin demonstrated that for us a few days ago, and we have cameras in lots of nooks and crannies, which I think will increase security. What's awesome, too, is I can access every camera in the district from my phone. So that's something that Kevin helped me with this summer, and now I can, boot up cameras. I have to be careful because it drains my battery, but I'll work around that. It's just really a good sense of we can really see what's going on. And down the road, I'd like to see that. I do have all of our cameras on my phone, but as we increase cameras at all of our schools, as our improvements go forward there. We also have completed the paving project at PHS. There may be some signage that still needs to be done and some punch list items, but overall, it's moving on target. It's done for all intents and purposes. The Wheeler project, as you've already heard about, is well underway and moving on schedule. Tonight, I did ask Chairman Deb Hardy to sign the Innovation and Education Fund, which we're doing with the Community Foundation of Greater New Britain, which I did bring up both at convocation and previously to the board at a special meeting. And now we will begin the process of convening a committee that will help us set parameters for how that grant will be awarded. I'd love to have a board member on that committee if anyone is interested. I do have about 5 teachers so far, so I'll probably start convening a committee in that regard by the end of this month, early next month. And again, I already mentioned some security improvements, but Kevin and his team were very busy all summer to make sure that Wheeler has technology in spite of the renovation. Every classroom still has a smart board or equivalent and necessary technology, so the children won't miss out on that in spite of the renovations. We had new monitors installed at about half the high school, and Kevin's worked to make sure teachers are trained. And as he mentioned earlier, the Raptor system, which we're in the process of training all of our office staff to do, it essentially checks licenses as folks come in to make sure that everyone that comes into our schools is safe and someone that we want to welcome into the schools and they are safe to be here. So those are all happening or well underway. And it's, I think these are things to be proud of because the board has endorsed these projects and they're going to be very important for the safety of our community. We will be offering as well at our November 6th Professional Development Day. At least half that day will be dedicated to safety and security training for teachers. We've looked at some advanced training that we are working hand in glove with our police department. Of course, SRO Martins is involved. Mr. LePage, Mr. Medic are involved, and we're going to put forward a training for teachers to give them a little more empowerment to kind of make some judgment calls during the course if there were ever an emergency. So that'll be something we're doing on the November 6th PD Day. And I believe, let me make sure there's no other slides, just our Inspire, Prepare, Engage rings. And this year we're asking teachers to tweet out #PCSCares whenever they have something that's happening in their schools that shows kids caring for each other or the kids caring for the community. So we have featured that hashtag as well as the Together We Can hashtag because we believe, as I've said before, that our collective efforts will be what makes this district even better than it is currently. So does the board have any questions about my report this evening?
I just have one question. On the 26th, what time is that?
It starts at 6, and it'll be here at the high school, and I'll send the board more information with a specific agenda. I expect it to last about an hour and a half. And again, Officer Martins will be our featured speaker with, giving the community a full report as to what her role is and all the things that she's already doing here. Chief Catania will explain his role in keeping our schools safe, and then I do have some speakers that'll talk about anxiety and some other issues that do impact our students and can, impact safety. So I believe it'll be a very informative night, and I hope we get a good turnout. So if there are no other questions from the board, I would now like to bring up Vicki Trzynski. We, each year, our special ed department receives a report on specific areas measured by the State Department of Education relative to special education services. Unfortunately, this data is pretty old. It's 2016-17, but we just got it, so that's just how it works. So Vicki will explain how we fared in the annual report and any implications it might have for our practice. So, Ms. Trzynski.
Thank you, Dr. Berman. Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to share our annual performance report. This report is designed to make sure that our district and state are in compliance with the requirements and purposes of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA. And these performance indicators were developed by the State Department of Ed in collaboration with the Federal Department of Education to ensure that all districts are complying with those many legal and procedural timelines that are required for special education. As Dr. Brummett reported, the data is a bit old, so we are looking at 15, 16, and 16, 17 data. So the good news is we've already really targeted much of this data and have already been working on action plans around some of what I'll talk about tonight. So we are very happy to report that, as you see, these areas are still in compliance, areas that we ensure students are properly identified for special education, that minority students in racial and ethnic groups are not over-identified as having disabilities, and we are also ensuring that students with disabilities are not disciplined more frequently than their non-disabled peers, and that all requirements are met for transition into preschool from our state birth to 3 services. So while those are the compliance indicators, there are some performance indicators as well. So you can see that our participation and proficiency rates for English language arts and math for grades 3 through 8 are above the state targets. Because we don't have enough students in grade 11, that's why you don't see a report there for the 11th grade. So we don't have a direct number there. We also make sure that we have increased our placements in general education and time with non-disabled peers, including the early childhood education environment. And one of the areas that I think that we're really proud of is the early childhood outcomes. So the state asks us to report each year for students who have transitioned from our preschool program into kindergarten, so it's usually by age 6, and so we have to report substantial growth in areas, and then areas where students are age appropriate moving into kindergarten. And this year, or in the 16-17 school year, 88.89% of our students had made substantial growth in the areas of positive social emotional skills, where the target for the state is 54%. And that we saw 75% of our students meeting age expectations for behaviors that are appropriate to meet their needs, and the state target is 24%. So it's 3 times really the state target. So we're pretty proud of those. Another indicator is the state-identified measurable result, or the SIMMER result. In the previous 2 years, we did have a score, and it is an index score, so it is not a percentage, but it is an index score sort of taking into account growth models and some other statistical analysis. And so this year we did not, or in 17-18, we did not have enough students to qualify to report this score. So you'll see that N equals less than 20. What that means is that we just had less than 20 students, and so that it wasn't statistically appropriate to report. That being said, we do look at the high-need students for all of our high-needs groups, that's the word I want, including our English language learners and those who are eligible for free or reduced lunch. Those are included, and we will be looking at those throughout the year as we get more individual student data. So the two areas that we saw on our annual performance report that needed improvement. One was to develop transition goals and services within the timelines required. You can see that we were 0.17% short of the substantial compliance of 95%. So that does put us in what they call needs assistance level 1. Because of this one indicator, there is no enforcement action required by the State Department of Ed, but it is something they asked us to look at and make sure that we are checking our data carefully in that area. The other one was that we did not meet the target in increased graduation rates with a standard high school diploma. And it's important to know when you're looking at that data, it doesn't mean, I think it was 60%, that only 60% of our special education students graduated. It just means that they didn't graduate within the 4-year required timeline. So if you look at the dropout rate, there's actually not enough students to report to make it, again, statistically significant. But really, most of our students do graduate, and other reports will show the graduation rate at 5 years, 6 years, and 7 years, because transition services are required for students up to age 21, depending on the significance of their disability. So I wanted to caution you about looking at that score. So seeing that the two areas that we really wanted to target were in our secondary secondary classes, we developed two transition support programs. The first one really is a formal program called the Plainville Transition Program. It actually has a facility code. It is basically a virtual school, so it is not a school with walls, but a program that kids who have met their graduation requirements here at Plainville High School now move into the Plainville Transition Program to have their services met there. Many of the kids do some work here in the school, and then they do other work here in the community. In addition to that formal program, we've also instituted services and supports for kids who are still in high school and earning their credits towards graduation. One of those was to hire an in-district transition coordinator and job coaches to assist students to have experiences in real-world applications to the learning that they have in school. We've also partnered with a number of community agencies for job shadows and work experiences within the community. Places like Nazo's, Walgreens, Saks Pizza, the Town Hall, Senior Center, the Public Library, and Linden Street School. So our kids really participate in a number of different activities there. We've also created or enhanced a course called the Transition Course for grades 11 and 12 for all students with disabilities. And we're going to be adding a 10th grade version of that course in the next school year. And that's really, again, to work on all of those, what we might call softer skills that many students with disabilities often don't have, and that prevents them from being able to fully access the community. Finally, we provided some professional development for all of our special education case managers to make sure that those goals and objectives that were targeted in this report are in full compliance with all of the state regulations. So I'm going to actually give this to you. So one of the documents that the State Department of Ed published, I think it was dated in May of 2016, but they really didn't publish it until last school year. It's called the Transition Bill of Rights. And I think this is an important document for you all to be aware of, because it is the State Department of Education's view of what is required for parents and students for students with disabilities. Note some of the things that are important to note is that services are required for students up to age 21 if their IEP or PPT team determines that they need those services. Another is the district's responsibility to assist families with connections to adult service agencies. The Department of Developmental Services, the Bureau of Rehab Services are all adult service providers that families need to have those connections to. The process is not easy for many families. The application process can be pretty arduous, and so it does require significant supports for many of our families to make those services a possibility for them. And then finally, you can see that the Bill of Rights has a pretty substantial list of resources that are both on the State Department of Ed website and our Plainville School District Special Services website. Things like building a bridge and the IEP resources. So again, we want to educate our families and help them to understand what's available to help our students meet the requirements for transition, and most importantly, to fully participate in our community. So you'll continue to hear about our transition services over the next year or two. Any questions about the performance report?
Thank you very much, Vicki. I think it bears mentioning, too, that, and this is a shout out to both Vicki and Leanne Gemeindl, the special education supervisor, is they have over a 90% parental approval rating from this year's surveys. It's gone up significantly over the past year, and I think it's a tribute to all these efforts that they're making to continue to expand our programs and to work with our families. In fact, I ran into two of our workers at Town Hall the other day, and they were very happy. They had reported about where they'd just been, and they were very excited about their jobs. And they're out in the community, which is what they're supposed to be, because down the road, that could lead to an actual job. So I think the work that they're trying to do with our students in the community is extremely powerful, and clearly our parents are very appreciative of that. So thank you very much, Vicki. One last item on my report, and I mentioned this in my board report this week, is I recently was appointed to the Advisory Committee on Intergovernmental Relations. It's an appointment by the governor, and my first meeting was last Friday, and one thing I want to report that I'm very excited about was the topic of unfunded mandates. Believe it or not, that was something we talked about for about an hour, and there's actually a commission that determines how costs are analyzed for unfunded mandates. And of course, those of us in the education world didn't agree with how things were determined. So I think there'll be some really good discussions about that going forward. So my next meeting is October 5th, but I think, when you sit on a committee like that, you want to make sure it's something you can make an impact on and have it be relevant to your work. And I think what I'm seeing right now is there'll be some discussion about how they determine whether or not a mandate is something that a district or a town, for that matter, can implement, and the costs and manual labor involved. So stay tuned for further updates on that commission. And finally, I just want to draw the board's attention to, under new business momentarily, as I mentioned already, you are going to be discussing the construction and what we need approval for relative to the next phases. Earlier this summer, the board interviewed and accepted the appointment of Melissa Orfatelli as our new assistant principal for the middle school in Linden, but we need to officially do that this evening. And tonight you'll also hopefully approve the new Plainville High School vision and mission statement. Mr. Medic is here if you have questions, but as I understand it, there was a 100% unanimous vote on that by the staff. So that concludes my report for this evening.
Any questions for Dr. Brummett? So next we'll go on to our board subcommittees with our student representatives report. Welcome, girls. If you could let us know your names, and congratulations for being here with us.
Thank you. Is it on? Can you hear me? Okay, good. I'm Maddie. I'm a senior at PHS this year, and I'm just going to start with our first day of school report and the start of the year. So school started on Tuesday, September 4th. With our freshman orientation. So the underclassmen come in a little bit early and they get a guided tour around the building just to kind of help them get comfortable with their schedule, and that was led by the upperclassmen, the majority seniors, but some juniors were involved. At this point, each class has had a meeting with the administration to discuss expectations for the school year. And on Friday, the senior class breakfast took place where we discussed fundraising for the year and prom, things like that. We are very happy to announce that we have a student resource officer in our building this year. Officer Martins has arranged a distracted driving program for us on the 12th, as Dr. Brummett had mentioned, for juniors and seniors to take advantage of. And overall, there's a really good energy in the building for the start of the year. Students are excited to be back in the classroom and be active in all their sports and their clubs that were postponed for the summer. And moving on to Allie for sports.
Hi, I'm Allie, and I'm talking about the sports and extracurriculars we have. The cross-country team went to their first invitational meet on Friday. We came home with 2 boys varsity trophies and 2 boys JV trophies, but our first official meet of the season is tomorrow. Hopefully it doesn't get canceled. And football had their first game last week, and they have their first home game this Friday. Girls soccer had their first win, and so did the boys soccer. And volleyball has their first game this week, and the swim team also won. And this year we have 280 kids doing a fall sport because we had a very large class of freshman athletes. And student council will be meeting soon to discuss homecoming and floats and themes, and class elections will be taking place around, usually they take place around late September to give students time to settle in and decide what they want to run for. And then we have some upcoming events.
Yep, so our first one is that Art Rich will be here at the high school on the 17th and the 18th to take pictures for students in grade 9, 10, and 11. Today were the headshots for the senior photos. And the open house at the high school will be on Wednesday, September 19th, and we will be having an early release that day.
And the school counseling department will be having a financial aid meeting on October 2nd at 6:30 for juniors and seniors to get financial aid for colleges. And on October 10th, students in grades 9, 10, and 11 will be taking the PSATs, and we're going to have a special early dismissal schedule for that. Thank you.
That's it. You girls have been very busy already.
Yeah.
The rest of the year is going to be even busier, I'm sure.
Yes.
Thank you for the report. So next we'll go on to our faculties committee. Mrs. Terrell?
Facilities did not meet.
Okay, and our policy committee?
And policy has a meeting scheduled for September 18th.
Alrighty, and Mrs. Peterson, finance subcommittee?
Nothing to report.
Okay. Advocacy update? Nothing. Turf committee report, Dr. Brummett? Okay. And Foster, the PAC?
The PAC will be meeting on Wednesday night. It's the first meeting of the year. They will be electing new officers, and they have sent out a request for parents to participate, and hopefully that will resolve in some increased members on the PAC starting Wednesday night.
Thank you. Nicole Palmieri for Tuffelon.
They meet this Thursday.
Okay, and myself for Linden. I believe theirs is this week sometime. I'm not sure, sorry about that. So I have no report. And Mrs. St. Lawrence for the middle school?
Yep, the MSP PTC will meet tomorrow night at 7 o'clock.
And then we have Wheeler. Oops, there's nobody there. Okay, so correct council report, Mrs. Terrell?
The correct council hasn't met yet this year.
Okay. Chairperson's report? No report? No report. And unfinished business? No. New business, board open forum, all board members, anything to say? Any comments, any questions?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I just want to first congratulate you
Thank you.
on your chairmanship. And second, I want to thank all of the high school volunteers that helped out at Balloon Fest. They were fantastic and helped out all weekend and made my life a lot easier, so thank you.
No other comments? No other?
Just to say that convocation was, I thought, very well done. It's nice to recognize individuals for their service. And I think that it helps make a community, and it's not just about, the teaching staff, who obviously, the heroes were in the classroom who said that. I don't remember where I heard that recently, but we know that. But I think that one of the things that it showed was some of the accomplishments of the custodial staff in not only what they've accomplished with the energy savings, but also in the years that they've been working there. It was pretty impressive. And I think they really appreciate that kind of recognition. I think that's really important. So I thought the convocation went really well. And I just had a question about the human resources report. This human resources report in this packet, the format is different. I think it's the first time maybe.
It is a different format, so if you want to give me feedback on that, and I will pass it back along. It's lengthy too, because it reflects everything over the summer.
It's hard to follow.
Okay.
The format we used to have is a little easier to see how things, people went from where and why. This is a little difficult to follow. So if there's any way, I don't know if it was, there's some.
No, we can modify it.
Or, I don't want to make more work for somebody, but if there's a way to
Find it.
put it back.
We'll put it back to the way it was.
Congratulations, Mrs. Hardy.
Thank you.
Paul Mary. And
Anybody else? Any other questions, comments, concerns? No? Okay, we can go on to our quarterly special education cost report with Mr. Adelson.
It's not going to be till October.
Back to October? Okay, no report. Okay, here's where we go to the request for the approval of construction documents for the Wheeler School additions and renovations, FF&E and Technology, Phase 2 of 3.
Make a motion to accept.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Motion passes. We have the acceptance of the board chair, Andrea Saunders, her resignation of July 26, 2018.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Request the appointment of Melissa Orfatelli to new assistant principal position for Linden Street School.
I
And-
move it. We approve the appointment of Melissa Orfatelli as the new assistant principal at the Linden Street School and at the middle school of Plainville.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Request the approval of new Plainville High School vision and mission statement.
I make a request to approve the new Plainville High School mission and mission statement.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And now we're down to the consent agenda.
motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very
Thank you.
much.